You're listening to the Voices of Recovery podcast. This is a special episode featuring a recovering addict. Hi, my name is Sophie X. I'm the host and producer of the Voices of Recovery podcast. I'm joined here today by Fern. Hi, Fern.
Hello there.
Hi, welcome. Thank you, Fern, so much for being on the podcast and for doing our readings for the Just for Today and for the SPAD.
It's been quite an honor.
I am so grateful to have you. You brought me into the rooms of recovery. Without you, this podcast wouldn't even exist.
Everybody is placed in front of us for exactly the reason, either to pay attention or not to pay attention. And what happened was I heard a message from someone that needed to be guided. And I took it upon myself, and I guess that's where your gratitude comes in, to be able to say, hey, I can relate to you and I can help you come in. And at that point, it worked.
You were
It
the
worked.
catalyst. You were the catalyst. The reaction was within me and you brought me in. And I'm so grateful to be in this recovery space with you. And
I can take credit for your first year recovery.
yes, you can. You
for
were my
being the
sponsor.
person.
Yeah, you were my sponsor. I love you so much. So you're on this special series of August about our predecessors. And you have 41 years clean.
And a half.
41 and a half. 41 and a
July
half
5th
years.
is my half anniversary.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So you have 41 and a half years clean. So tell me a little bit about what it's been like to be in recovery through 4 decades, right? You've seen the AIDS epidemic, you've seen the crack epidemic, the heroin epidemic, you've seen the opioid crisis, you've seen COVID, you've seen all of these different ebbs and flows of this program through many different evolutions throughout time in the New York area and also outside of New York. So you have a unique perspective. And I would love for our listeners to get to hear, from Fern, from behind Fern's eyes, how it all progressed. So take it away.
I'm so grateful that, though it sounds like a whole lot of clean time, it's still many Sundays, Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, etc., day at a time. And I still feel excited for recovery, excited for what every day brings, and not planning or knowing what's going to happen in the future. I'm prepared to stay 100% both feet grounded in this day, today. And it just, I've been doing it every single morning. The time has been inconsequential in the general picture because events, I guess it would be successes and learning experiences that became success by just being spiritual. So I came into recovery not because I wanted to. I had no idea about the disease of addiction. I had no idea where life would bring me, but I went into a detox finally after trying on my own for many years to stop using. I just wanted to stop putting needles in my arm. I mean, I just, I ended up in that, street junkie life. I didn't like it, but I was so used to it that it just became another day. Every day was a struggle, and it was just another day.
How long were you using for?
When I came into recovery, when I got clean, when I came into recovery, I was in my late 20s. When I got clean, I was 31. I'm 72 now.
And so when do you remember ever first using?
Oh, when I was a child. I'm Jewish. We had seders at Grandma's house, and everybody got this little cup of wine in front of them, including the children. And with each Kaddish prayer, you'd take a sip of the wine from the cup. And I would drink all the wine in the cup. I liked the flavor. I liked the effect, the euphoric effect that it gave me. I liked the warmth. And I knew at an early age that I would look forward to going to Grandma's for the holidays, and they would end up inadvertently every year putting, well, every time we were there, a few holidays during the year, but every time I'd end up on one of their beds to sleep it off, and and I loved it.
So the signs were there from when you were a kid that you might be an
Early.
addict.
Yeah.
But you probably didn't recognize it as a problem then, right?
No, I just wanted more.
Hmm.
More. If I had something and I wanted more, I'd steal it.
Mm.
I don't feel the shame now
The
from
ways and means to get more, right?
it, and that was stealing, lying, cheating, at a very early age, uh, just because I wanted what I wanted and I wanted it now. And if I liked it, I want it in 5 colors, and I want to get it when I'm ready, not when you say I have to wait for it. So I became capable of doing subversive acts to get what I wanted.
Right. So talk about the progression of the disease then. If you were showing signs as a child, how did it progress as you aged?
Well, I had good friends that were not addicts, so it didn't come out with drugs specifically until I was in my teens. I guess it started with alcohol as a child, and yes, it was alcohol. And then pot came in, and Vietnam was going on, and Woodstock. I was in Woodstock. I barely remember that whole entire 2 weeks. What was a weekend took me 2 weeks to get home.
How did you get there?
Hitched,
Oh,
like the rest of us,
from New York?
from New York City, of course.
Wow.
Yeah, why not? I mean, there was a steady line of hippies hitching up the quick way, 17 West, to go upstate. And it was a lot of fun. I was with a lot of good people. And then Vietnam was going on. So there was this whole resurgence of burning your bra and not conforming to the conformists.
The resistance.
There became a division between those that followed the pathway to living legally and playing by the rules, and those of us that said "up against the wall, motherfucker." Now that was a song by
Yeah.
David Peel in the Lower East Side, where I was in the Lower East Side, and I took great credit in being subversive, in protesting for all the right reasons. I believed in the power of free speech and the power of free thought, and I I unfortunately had very little guidance though, because the people that guided us were those extremists, and I had already ran away from home at 15 and 3/4 years old. My dad had just passed the year before. My poor mother couldn't handle me. I don't know how hard she looked for me, but she kind of let me go because she had other children at home, and they were all conforming to her rules. I was the one that said, I don't have to listen to you. And unfortunately, it left this big gaping hole inside of me as a person, this loneliness. And even though I was with all those people I'm talking about, and all those, like, the crowd at Woodstock was not overwhelming to me. I'm very comfortable in a crowd of people. So, even though cramped and crowded, in the place where I lived each night, where I'd crash and at somebody's pad each night, and have to sleep with people just to have that mattress to go to sleep at night. We'd have to have sex, and I never considered it, an affront to my character or rape or, at that time, because it was just what I had to do to go to bed, and all I wanted to do was go to sleep. And then there was all these acid trips and hitchhiking across the country. I mean, and only making it as far as Chicago, and then
It's a long
turning
way.
around. And someone said, "Oh, well, we're going back to New York." And I said, "You know what? Can I come with you?" And went back to New York. it was with a lot of experiences that could fill a comedy show, quite frankly. But the paradox is that inside me, inside my psyche, inside my heart, was this loneliness, this unabided feeling of just aloneness, with no one to depend on really, no one to really trust. And so I felt like just as a one person, and I came into recovery that way, just one person, thinking for my own, not capable really of listening to other people. If they agreed with me, fine. If I didn't agree with the theory or what you were saying, I couldn't listen because I didn't trust you. You might ask me for something I don't want to give. And thank God for Narcotics Anonymous. No one ever said, "Oh, you're high at this meeting." I came to NA for years using. No one told me, get lost. No one said, you shared that yesterday and the day before and the day before.
Hmm.
Could you think of something new? No one ever said that. No one ever asked me if my car was stolen. No one ever asked me if I had a driver's license. You know, they just cared about why I was in the room. What are you doing here in this room?
And how can we help?
And how can we help, right? And New York at the time, there were very few women that were clean. It was mostly men. And which worked for me because I didn't trust women anyway, No, I didn't really trust women. I came into recovery. My name is Fern, which sets me apart. I have fuzzy brown hair, glasses, freckles, always the kid at the front of the line because I was the shortest. And, my arrogance and my sarcasm set me apart. I looked like Vogue on the outside because I stole everything I wore. And it was Mad magazine on the inside
Mm.
because I thought with such obscurity, you know, uh, nothing was really succinct and to the point. If you asked me, how do you feel today? I didn't know. I had no idea how I felt. I felt anger, I felt frustration, or I felt elated. There was that was within where I lived.
So you talked about coming to recovery, but not yet getting clean. Tell me about your life when you were getting to the end of your rope. I believe you had children then.
Yeah. Okay, so my daughter was 4 when I started coming when I went to my first meeting. She was 4 years old. And she was 7 when I got clean. So it took 3 years. In my first year of recovery, I did not take the suggestion about not being in a relationship. And at 4 months clean, I got pregnant with my son. So my first year of recovery, when they brought me my cake to Surf City in Long Beach, there I was with my big belly out. But for the end of my using, that's when I was driving into the city with my stolen car without a license, typical, crying because this song came on that said, Love's got a line on you. And in my mind, I heard, Dope's got a line on you. Dope is telling me what to do next. Dope, the little things that I was hearing in the rooms were starting to get into my head, when I wasn't in a meeting. Remember, we only had one meeting, no cell phones. Everything was done picking up a receiver. And so there was a lot of alone time. I had, I'm crying because I don't want to go in to cop. I didn't want to go, but I had no choice. And it was Christmas time. I was working in a salon, a hairdresser, working in a salon where everybody is so happy. Dun da da dun dun da da dun. Music is playing and there's these wine containers up front, for people to come and have a little glass and celebrate, the holiday and get their hair done. And I am miserable. I'm miserable. I have no dope. I have to go cop. It's Christmas Eve day. We're going to my mother's that night for Christmas for the first time. My daughter was going to see Santa. Growing up Jewish, we didn't do this, but now we have Catholics in our family, and Santa Claus shows up. Well, I ended up getting into a fight with my brother, who's less than a year younger than me, but an actual fist fight at my mother's house in front of my family. I mean, it was horrible. My mother sent me back to my home in a taxi and said, "Don't worry, you'll pick up the baby tomorrow." And which is what happened a lot. And it was getting to the point where I couldn't, it was hard to go and cop every day. It wasn't that easy anymore. People were like just not trusting me enough to lend me money, thinking they were not going to get it back. So I was losing my credentials. Now, what I thought I was inside my head was totally different than what I was in reality outside of my mind. People didn't love me as much or trust me as much or want me around them as much as I thought they did, because time was irrelevant. I was just living my junky life, not feeding my daughter as she should have been fed, not doing the things that are morally right to do in life, and not realizing the impact of all that, and not seeing myself in anyone else's eyes.
So, what brought you to that point of surrender?
It was that Christmas at my mother's, the fight. I got home and I was glad to be home because I had a little bit of dope left at the house. I did the rest of what I had, and now I'm out of it. And the next day is Christmas Day. No one's going to be out on the streets selling drugs because everybody's home for Christmas. There's very little gas in the car to go back in. I thought I had gotten enough to get through the holidays, but there was never enough. And I thought, what am I doing? Could it be the drugs?
Yeah. I wonder.
For the first time in all the years I had been coming, it became apparent to me that it became questionable that it could be the drugs. It could be that I just can't, it could be the drugs, could be the reason why I can't get past, 5 to go into a 10. On the scale of 0 to 10, I was 0 to, at best, 5. I couldn't get past 5. So it just became apparent to me that Christmas. I started to come to Narcotics Anonymous hearing it differently. The last night I used was January 4th. It was a Thursday evening. I was at Merrick Sunrise, which was then in Merrick. I went to Merrick Sunrise. My friend John, and Conrad, the two people of many, many, many people that I knew that were still talking to me, came and sat with me. I sat in the back of the room all the time. They came and sat with me, asked me, "Are you done yet?" I didn't know if I was done or not. My girlfriend Robin, who's not here anymore, gave me a birthday card. My birthday was in November, but she hadn't seen me since then in meetings. She gave me a birthday card that had the Art Carney and Jackie Gleason and the two wives all with their heads outside the bus and their thumbs up, all 4 of them in a row, and it said "Happy Birthday" in the front. But then the inside of the card said "To one of our gang." And I started to realize that that's where I belonged. I belonged in Narcotics Anonymous, the place I had been searching for to fill that hole that was slowly getting filled unbeknownst to me, because I didn't know what happiness felt like. So, I mean, I knew what it felt like theoretically, but I didn't feel it. I wasn't really happy. I just acted as if every day I kept coming to meetings. That's my story. I just kept coming. And that night when she gave me that card, and I didn't open it in the meeting, I left the meeting early, as I did all the time, to get home because I still had something at home. All right, January 4th. I got home. I opened the card. I looked in the card. I felt like horrible because that's it. That's where I belong. And then I went to do the rest of what I had, and the works clogged. And it took me a long time to unclog it. And it was hours later, and I did something I had never done in recovery because that card opened my heart enough. I made a phone call and
Mm,
called somebody.
mm.
I finally called somebody. In the front of every meeting list, there's lines where people put their phone numbers and they wait for you to call them. And I had, oh, I don't know, half a dozen. I had 19 white chips, and we used poker chips then. There were no key tags yet. White was the sign of surrender, red for 90 days, and blue for 6 months. Those are the only three we had. I had all these poker chips because I kept coming, but I didn't have what it took inside of me to stay. And finally, I made a phone call, and I got my friend's roommate, who I didn't really know, but she was in the other fellowship, you know. Now, to make a 90 and 90 at that time, Narcotics Anonymous didn't have 7 meetings for every week, you know. Some days there were no meetings unless you went up to Westchester County or to New Jersey or to Connecticut. And I wasn't that tied into recovery to actually do that. So first I called my friend Conrad, who I was sitting in the meeting with me. And he goes, oh, you know, you gotta get rid of those wax. You know, I'm not gonna help you if you have wax around the house. I'm like, I can't. He said, throw those fucking things away. You know, I couldn't. I couldn't do it. And I said, okay, I'm gonna try. And I hung up the phone. Then I called somebody else.
Mm.
I called my girlfriend Debbie, and I got her roommate. And her roommate said, she just talked to me. She talked to me about what I was feeling. She listened to me when I said what I was going through. I had one of those long princess phones that were up on the wall.
Mhm.
The cord was 14 feet, but it was shriveled up to a foot and a half because it was all up at the wall like spaghetti.
Mhm.
And I'm walking around the apartment back and forth like something out of, a movie scene saying, I can't get this. I can't get any clean time. I can't get any clean time. And she said to me, what time is it now? And it was 10 minutes after 12, midnight. And she said to me, Fern, you have 10 minutes clean. And that's when my recovery started. Because in my mind, it was a marquee at Times Square saying 10 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes. I had something, and I was in recovery, and I'm talking to someone on the phone, and she said, you're not going to be able to keep it if you still have those works around. And I said, okay, let's do this together. And I tied up the garbage bag and told her, hold on, because you couldn't, there were no cell phones.
Right.
Had to have her hold on. Ran downstairs, threw my bag of garbage into my next door neighbor's garbage can,
Mhm.
because I would never have the nerve to go back in their garbage can
Right, right.
to retrieve it.
Smart.
Ran back up the stairs and said, okay, I did it. And I just cried for the entire rest of the night. And the next day was January 5th. I went to my first meeting on a Friday, and we read Who is an Addict? What is the NA program? Why are we here? How it works? And everything sounded different. I started to relate to everything I was listening to. I thought to myself, yes, that's me. Yes, I feel that way. Yes, I've done those things. Yes, it doesn't matter if I'm gay or straight or my hair's fuzzy or my name is Fern or And I had no idea really still what was going to happen next. But I felt different. I felt like I belonged in the fellowship, and now I was there.
So tell me a little bit about the early days of recovery and what that was like to have another fellowship around, but to have NA be in its infancy.
Right.
And juxtapose that a little bit with today and the availability of recovery. I met you on Zoom and what that's been like being in a completely different space in recovery.
Well, in my beginning in Narcotics Anonymous, let's start from the time I'm clean. By that time, my work started to hire me from noon to night because I worked better when I didn't have to come in early. They did want me there. I was a moneymaker, which is the only reason why I was able to keep a job. So I started going to AA meetings in the morning when there was no NA meeting that day. And then after work, I would go to an NA meeting. A bunch of us would pile in a car and we'd go to the Star Group in Brooklyn because that was the only meeting, that was that night. Or we'd get into a car and go out to Long Island, to Bayshore, because there was a meeting that night. As a matter of fact, it was the same night. There was Monday night was Bayshore, Jamaica, Queens, or Brooklyn. That was it. Can you imagine? If you talked about people, you heard about it the next day because everybody went to the same meetings, saw each other, and the beauty of that is the closeness
Mm.
and the tightness that came with actually having respect for the person that you sat next to, even if you really didn't like them.
It seemed like a much more close-knit community for sure.
We had no choice. And there was pre cell phone. So everyone called everybody up by putting a dime in the payphone, which then became a quarter. Let me see what else. Oh boy, AIDS. People did not understand the virus. They didn't understand. None of us really understood it. We just knew that people were dying. Somebody would get up and go to the bathroom and come back into the meeting, and nobody else would use that toilet.
Mm.
Thinking that that person has AIDS or could have AIDS, or they have that look.
Mm.
Their face was pop marked, their eyes were becoming sunken. They didn't want to say anything in the rooms because there was such a stigma of being sick in the rooms, of someone else catching it. They wouldn't kiss you or hug you. So then we had meetings, illness and recovery meetings started. The first illness and recovery meeting here started in Mercy Hospital. And illness and recovery meetings started in the city. The 10th World Convention was at the Vista Hotel. It was in September of 1983,
A couple months before you got
a
clean.
couple of months before I got clean. And I was afraid to go into the city, even the convention, because remember, I was on my own. I hadn't relied on people to go into meetings with. I hadn't been making phone calls or talking to people outside of going to meetings. So I had friends in the rooms when I was in the room, but nothing when I was not in an NA meeting. So when that meeting opened up, and in 83, we started to grow, the next week there were 75 meetings in New York. The next month, there were hundreds of meetings in New York. 6 months, there were 1,000 meetings in New York now. And every day, new meetings are starting. So it was 83 where we had the convention. And just a few months later, I got clean. And I'm really happy to say I became a part of people that started meetings all over the place. Let's say there's no women's meeting around this area. Okay, let's say there's no men's meeting around this area. There's not enough step meetings. Nobody really wanted to work the steps. There wasn't really any literature on working the steps. There were pamphlets by Hazelton working step 4 in Narcotics Anonymous. I remember that in my first meetings. There were 5 or 6 IPs. One of them was Another Look. That was my first one I remember. And it was my favorite, always, has always been my favorite. But meetings started growing like a blooming onion. We just started growing everywhere. And we were making a lot of mistakes. I mean, people were bringing things into the room. There were drug addicts selling drugs outside the building. There were like 25 motorcycles that would pull up into this, suburban area to go to the church, and they'd be vroom, vroom, vroom.
Goodness.
And we beg them, please don't do that. Don't do that outside the church. We're going to lose our meeting. And we'd lose the meeting because we were too rowdy.
Bunch of
We
drug
had to,
addicts.
well, what society perceived a bunch
Right,
of drug
exactly.
addicts. They
Exactly.
perceived us as using. They didn't perceive us as recovering
Right.
because we didn't act that way yet.
Hmm.
It took a while in New York because we're so strong willed and so hard headed and elitist too. Like nothing's as good as New York.
Of course.
No one, you got clean in New York, you can get clean anywhere. Well, if you got clean in Boise, Idaho, you can get clean anywhere.
Hmm.
But we didn't consider that. We only considered ourselves. People would drop literature. They wouldn't want to read certain things. They changed the meaning of the steps. You got someone who was the chairperson and he'd be doing all the readings. I mean, it was a little bit nutso. But, as time went on and different people from outside communities came in and people within the New York area started to stay clean and flourish and want to do the next right thing, want the fellowship to grow in the way that it should, and we became our own meeting list. I remember when our area was SNAS, Suffolk Nassau Area Service. I was the GSR for Surf City, and we had 75 meetings between Suffolk and Nassau.
Wow.
And so they wanted to split the region and have a Suffolk area and a Nassau area. And I'm like, no, no, wait a minute, no, you can't make these changes. We're doing perfect. Well, we weren't. Not everybody was heard. Nobody wanted to sit in an area service meeting for 5 hours while everybody got heard. And my sponsor, thank God for Rosie, she said to me, Fern, you want to split the area. You want to grow. That means that now there's two magnificent areas, not just one. And out of those two areas grew four more areas. And that's what you want. You want it to grow because now we have steps, we have traditions, we have more literature to follow. We have more people that are following the literature that we are following so that we're learning to listen and listening to learn now. You know,
And multiple meetings in multiple locations available for,
every night of the week.
right?
Every night of the week. And we had meetings where we'd watch the babies so that new mothers can recover.
Mm.
We were conscious of the fact that, sometimes I breastfed my son, while I was in a meeting, all the way in the back in the corner with a towel over me, mind you. But I mean, under a blanket. But, I had to be in the room that night.
Hmm.
If I wasn't in the room that night, I didn't know where I was going to be
Right.
that night.
So thank God you came in at a time when NA was actually flourishing,
Growing.
growing.
In the process of growing, in
Hmm.
the process of expanding. And I'm so grateful I was a part of that. At that point, I have to say, it affected my ego. It affected everyone's ego that had, a year or more clean because we weren't humble yet.
To have been around from the beginning, right? From before all these meetings popped
I
up.
came in just after the beginning.
Hmm.
I came in when we had a few meetings in New York. I came in when my predecessors were there saying, Are you done yet? Are you done yet? Are you ready? And it wasn't until that Thursday night that I became ready.
Mm. And you do a whole lot of service in many different facets, right? I mean, you sponsor women, you host book studies on your free time, you host meetings online, you do in-person meetings, you do service at the area level. So talk to me a little bit about service in your life and as part of your recovery.
Service keeps me grounded to really what's most important, and that's to serve. The newcomer is the most important person. And some mornings I wake up because of life on life's terms. I might have fear for the health of my wife, or 2 years ago it was my health. So you can wake up feeling like a newcomer, not knowing what to do next. But now I remember that there is a guide. And when I brush my teeth with my spiritual toothpaste every morning, it looks like Colgate, but it feels like, recovery, and that minty feeling opens up my senses, and I become a spiritual woman in a human world before I walk out of the bathroom in the morning. I'm aware that everything's going to be okay as long as I don't use. I do that because I talk about it enough and I do service, just like you're doing here. I mean, we each find our own niches, like what kind of service works for you. I'm not a good secretary in a meeting. I don't like taking notes, and I take too many notes. I take notes verbatim,
Same.
Yeah, so I mean, it's like when I go to transfer those to correspondence, it's like, oh my God, I have way too much information
15
here.
pages
Yeah, it's
for a
not
5 minute
necessary.
conversation.
Right, exactly.
You've seen me do it in
So,
action.
but I am good as a leader, and not because I lead, but because I create an atmosphere of longing for people who want to be there. I stand back and let other people come forward.
I am a product of that. I'm a product of
I'm
that.
so grateful
You
for
told me,
that.
take a commitment and help set up the meeting and
Right.
do this and do that. And I just, I just took your suggestions. So
And in your usual fashion, you took 10 commitments. And anytime someone said, we need, you said, I'm here. I can do it. Which is why you're staying clean.
yeah,
I
right.
mean, but it's not just being clean. I mean, it's the richness that we offered, by following direction.
Hmm.
Like, how we always say, oh, I wish I had a guidebook for that, raising children. Guess what? There's a guidebook.
Hmm.
It's called The Steps.
Right.
I wish I had a roadmap. Well, guess what? Get out of the driver's seat, get into the passenger side, open up the glove box, and pull out your step work. There's steps, 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 steps. You know, um, I'm not everybody's everything, but I'm placed at certain times for certain reasons, and it's all fulfilling to me.
So talk a little bit about what it was like to be clean during the crack epidemic, opiate crisis.
Well, I came in before crack.
Hmm.
I have a feeling that if I were on crack, I would have come in a little bit sooner. And I believe my insanity was insane, believe me. But I'm glad I got clean when I did. We had to learn not to judge. I'll tell you, there was a meeting that started on a Sunday morning in the Rockaways, and I started to go to that meeting every Sunday. And some guy was in there sharing, and he had tears in his eyes when he was speaking, saying that he woke up and he had to take Tylenol, not because he had a headache, but because he had to take some kind of a pill. And what if he had a headache? And I thought to myself, wow, same disease,
Mm.
different seat on the Titanic.
Oh, yeah.
And so when it came to like crackheads, whether you got clean because you were smoking pot or you smoked pot every Saturday, but try not to smoke this Saturday, can't happen. I have to smoke this Saturday. It's so much easier to focus on the reason why we're here than what seat we sat in when we got here.
Hmm.
It doesn't matter if you're a crazy crackhead, a crazy dope fiend, and a crazy pothead, whether you've taken too much acid, whether you have to take Tylenol every day just in case you get a headache, even when you don't need it. That man taught me so much. And let me tell you, I judged the hell out of him when he was sharing. I said to my sponsor later on, can you believe that this guy was saying this? And she said, you missed it. You missed the concept here. You missed it, honey. That guy had to use,
Had to.
had to,
Different manifestation of the same disease.
had no choice, had to. I stay clean today because I listen to other people. I'm on meetings where there are people with white hair that have been clean 30, 40, 50, 60 years because I need those messages. And I serve on meetings on Zoom where of the 167 people that are on there, 100 of them are newcomers. And I do that because I take what I get and then I give it away.
And you also serve in the jails.
So I've been to jail twice. I will never forget. never forget the feeling of being patted down and having to strip in front of the guards just to check me out when I first got there. And they said, one woman said to me, "Oh, honey, they're going to love you." I'll never forget that. I still have the poetry that I wrote, the aloneness, the hurt. I just wanted to go home. I missed my family. I missed my mother. I missed my brothers and my sister. I just really wanted to go home. I didn't want to be there. I didn't want that anymore. I just had no way to get out because I only spoke to myself. So I go to the jail because somebody's sitting in there that feels that way. I have to tell you, there's a girl whose second and third anniversary I've been at, and I spoke at her second anniversary from the jail. You know, you know that story about the guy that's walking down the beach and somebody sees him from a distance and it looks like he's picking rocks up and throwing them into the water. And he gets up closer and he sees that he's picking up starfish and he's just throwing them back into the water. And he said to him, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Well, they're going to die if I don't throw them back in the water." And he goes, how can you do that? There's like thousands of starfish here. And he picks up a starfish and he throws it into the water. And he said, "Well, it made a difference to that one."
Right. To that one.
I mean, so that's what it is. It's about helping one person. Now, I know there's more than one person being helped, and I know that because I'm constantly receiving messages saying thank you, or just want to tell you I love you, or, I celebrated 90 days. Thank you for being a part of my recovery. And so I'm in. I'm in. I got in, I stayed in, and there's no reason to leave. The day I opened my business and I'm cleaning around the countertops, waiting for the doors to open, I'm there really early. Of course, now I'm come in on time and stay late. You know, I'm opening the doors and I'm thinking, this is pretty good for a junkie. The day my husband and I were on our honeymoon, and the day I gave birth to my son, my clean baby, and the day I married my wife, many, many years after my husband passed, I thought to myself, this is pretty good for a junkie. I see myself as I used to be
Mm,
when I didn't know better. I remember how far down one could go. Okay, so no one can see me, but look at all my beautiful teeth.
perfect.
I got them in my seventh year clean.
Mm,
It took years to actually get clean. It took years to focus on it and stay clean. And it took years to figure out that I had what I needed all along. It was always inside of me. I just had to be willing to utilize every single thing. But I have to go to meetings. I have to call my sponsor. When you do step work with sponsees, and when you go to step meetings and host meetings where we're reading the steps, I'm working my step all over again. And not by myself because I'm actually working my steps with my sponsor.
mhm.
We do it over the phone now. We started on step one just actually 2 months ago.
Amazing.
We said, you know what? It's time to do this. Let's do this together. Just let's do it.
The fact that you're working steps at 41 years clean is enough of an example of itself, right? The fact that you can go back and say it's time to start right back from the beginning.
Why not? I mean, I start not from the beginning now. I start with today now. And today is so good that it's a different step one. It's a different step two. There's so much more self-worth and self-esteem in my everyday life that every step sounds different, but I know the worthiness.
And with that, I want to thank you so much for giving your time, your energy, and your passion to this program and to people like me who are so eager to hear the message and all the love that you pour into everything that you do. I am personally so grateful for you. I know that there are hundreds and thousands of people because, being clean for 40 years, you've touched a lot of people. And I think it's important for you to recognize how many people you've touched and how many people you continue to influence. And I love you so much, Fern. Thank you so much.
I'm very, very, very grateful to a power far greater than ourselves that brought us together, that has me sitting here. And Sophie, baby, I'm so proud of
I
you.
love you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Be well, Fern.
We have to hug now.
Of course. I love you. The Voices of Recovery podcast is an independent production of the Works of Wisdom. We welcome your questions and donations via PayPal at voicesofrecoverypod@gmail.com. This podcast is an independent production and is not affiliated with, associated with, authorized by, endorsed by, or in any way officially connected with Narcotics Anonymous or any of its subsidiaries or affiliates. While NA literature may be read during episodes for the purpose of supporting recovery, such use does not constitute an official endorsement or representation by Narcotics Anonymous. In accordance with NA tradition, the NA name is not to be used to endorse or be affiliated with any outside enterprise, and no such endorsement or affiliation is implied. Music is by Sage. Thanks for listening to the Voices of Recovery podcast.